0600 hours, 30,000 feet above the Bashi Channel. The sun crests the eastern horizon, painting the Philippine Sea in shades of violet and burning orange. 4 U.S. fighter jets cut through the thin air in a loose diamond formation. Their engines hum with a steady, low-frequency vibration that rattles the airframe. Condensation trails stretch out behind them like long white scars on the endless blue canvas. Inside the glass canopies, the pilots scan their multifunction displays and check fuel levels. The radio remains quiet, save for the rhythmic breathing of the flight lead. It is a textbook patrol in international airspace. A single digital chirp breaks the silence. The flight lead glances at his radar scope. The green sweep refreshes. The empty screen suddenly clutters with multiple red contact markers. They are not drifting. They are closing at supersonic speeds. The threat warning system screams a high-pitched alarm. The cockpit floods with red light. Brake right, the radio roars. The formation shatters instantly. The U.S. fighter jets bank hard, pulling 7 Gs. Wings flex under the immense pressure as the aircraft fight the laws of physics. The pilots grunt against the sudden inflation of their G-suits. Through the canopy glass, the horizon tilts violently. Far ahead, glints of silver flash against the rising sun. Enemy aircraft. A squadron of Chinese fighter jets dives from a higher altitude. They drop like hawks hunting prey. The flight lead snaps his control stick back, bringing the nose of his jet around. He toggles the weapon selector to air-to-air mode. The targeting reticle dances over the lead enemy bandit. A tone growls in his headset, a solid lock. He squeezes the trigger on the stick. Fox 3! The fuselage shudders as a medium-range missile drops from the rail and ignites. A trail of white smoke marks its path, accelerating toward the oncoming swarm. The enemy flight splits instantly. 2 bandits break high, climbing toward the sun to blind the sensors. 2 others dive low toward the white caps of the ocean. The missile loses its lock, seduced by a cloud of silvery chaff released by the enemy lead. It detonates harmlessly in empty air, a black puff against the blue. The 2 formations merge. Jets pass each other at a combined closure rate of 1,000 knots. The air rips apart with a sonic boom that shakes the water below. The calm patrol is gone. The dogfight begins. 0610 hours, the airspace over the Bashi Channel becomes a tangled web of smoke and screaming metal. The initial merge scatters the aircraft across a 10-mile radius. Engines roar at maximum afterburner, dumping raw fuel into exhaust streams that glow blue-white. The sky, once serene, now looks like a chaotic, abstract painting of twisting white contrails. The U.S. flight lead wrestles his stick into the corner of the cockpit. His aircraft shudders violently as it bleeds speed to tighten the turn. Gravity crushes him into the ejection seat. His G-suit inflates instantly, squeezing his legs to keep blood in his brain. He grunts hard, forcing air into his lungs. Through the canopy, he spots a Chinese fighter jet banking hard to the left, attempting to gain a firing solution on his wingman. The enemy aircraft flares its nose up, momentarily stalling in the air before pivoting on its axis. It is an impossible maneuver, defying conventional aerodynamics. The U.S. pilot slams the throttle forward. His engine screams as it gulps air. He rolls inverted and dives, chasing the bandit's heat signature. "Bandit at 4 o'clock! Brake left!" the radio barks. The U.S. wingmen react instantly. He snaps his aircraft 90 degrees to the port side. A split second later, tracers streak past his canopy. They look like angry fireflies, tearing through the space where his cockpit was a moment ago. The 30mm rounds chew up the empty air. The Chinese pursuer overshoots, carrying too much speed. The hunter becomes the hunted. Inside the cockpit, the radar warning receiver wails a new tone. A lock is detected. The U.S. flight lead sees the smoke trail before the radar confirms it. A short-range, heat-seeking missile leaps from the wing of a second Chinese jet. It accelerates instantly, reaching Mach 2 in seconds. Flares! The U.S. pilot mashes the dispense button. Shoots of magnesium flare packets eject from the rear fuselage. They ignite instantly, burning hotter than the jet engine. The seductive heat confuses the incoming missile. The weapon swerves wildly, chasing the dying embers of a flare. It detonates 200 yards away. The shockwave slaps the U.S. jet, rattling the instruments, but the airframe holds. The pilot grits his teeth and pulls back on the stick, trading airspeed for altitude. Dragging the fight into the vertical, the dance of death continues. 6-12 hours, the invisible spectrum of war ignites. Inside the U.S. cockpits, radar displays dissolve into static snow. A piercing digital screech drowns out the radio chatter. The Chinese formation has activated high-powered electronic jamming pods. False targets ghost across the screens, multiplying from 4 bandits to 40 in the blink of an eye. The targeting computers struggle to find a heartbeat in the noise. The pilots are blind to the electronic eye. They must now fight with their own. Radar is dazzled. Switching to heat, the flight lead yells. He toggles a switch on the throttle quadrant. The heads-up display shifts modes, bringing up a small circular reticle. He scans the sky, looking for the glint of sun on metal. Above him, a Chinese fighter jet rolls inverted. It drops from the sun like a stone. The enemy pilot anticipates the blindness. He commits to a head-on pass. The threat warning system changes its tone from a waver to a solid, terrifying, continuous beep. The jammer did not protect them from everything. A Chinese radar-guided missile drops from the belly of the diving jet. Its rocket motor flares, drawing a smoky line straight at the U.S. lead. Launch! Launch! 12 o'clock high! The U.S. pilot slams the stick forward and kicks the left rudder pedal. The jet responds instantly, snapping into a violent -G dive. Dust and loose debris from the cockpit floor float into the air, suspended by the physics of the maneuver. The pilot forces his hand to the countermeasures panel. He punches the chaff button repeatedly. Cartridges eject from the tail of the aircraft. They burst open, creating a massive bloom of aluminum-coated glass fibers. The cloud hangs in the air, creating a radar reflection larger than a ship. The incoming missile screams toward the target. Its seeker head sends out radar pulses, searching for the jet. The pulses hit the chaff cloud and bounce back. The missile bites on the decoy. It plunges into the cloud of silver fibers and detonates. The explosion shreds the air. Shrapnel peppers the tail of the U.S. jet, pinging against the titanium skin like hail on a tin roof. The aircraft bucks wildly in the shockwave. The pilot wrestles the controls, fighting to stabilize the bird. He levels the wings, breathing hard. He is alive, but the distance has closed. The fight is now visual. 6:15 hours, the vertical arena collapses into a chaotic swirl of aluminum and composite. The engagement is no longer about radar blips or digital ghosts. It is a visceral, visual brawl. Aircraft flash past one another at distances so close the pilots can see the rivets on the opposing airframes. The roar of afterburners creates a continuous thunder that vibrates through the bones of the aviators. Sunlight glints off canopy glass as the machines twist in a deadly ballet. The U.S. wingman spots a momentary opening. A Chinese fighter jet banks hard to the right, bleeding energy to reverse its turn. The maneuver is aggressive, exposing the jet's hot engine exhaust for a fraction of a second. The American pilot slams the throttle forward. He hauls the control stick into his gut. The G-forces hit him like a physical blow, driving the air from his chest. His vision grays at the edges as the blood drains from his head to his feet. He fights the blackout, straining his neck muscles to keep his eyes locked on the bandit. He anticipates the enemy's next move. The Chinese pilot attempts to force an overshoot, deploying air brakes to stop mid-air. The U.S. jet rushes forward, closing the distance at terrifying speed. The American pilot chops his throttle to idle and deploys his own speed brake. The massive hydraulic panel on the spine of the aircraft catches the wind. The jet shudders violently, slowing just enough to stay behind the target. A growling tone erupts in the pilot's headset. The heat-seeking seeker head detects the searing temperatures of the enemy engine. The tone rises to a high-pitched scream. Good tone. Fox 2! The pilot depresses the red button on the stick. A short-range missile leaps off the wingtip rail. The rocket motor ignites with a blinding flash. It accelerates instantly, leaving a thin trail of white smoke that corkscrews through the air. The Chinese pilot sees the launch. He rolls inverted and dumps flares, desperate to distract the weapon. It is too late. The missile ignores the decoys, locked firmly on the engine nozzle. It covers the distance in a heartbeat. The missile slams into the right engine of the Chinese fighter jet. The explosion is instantaneous and absolute. The rear of the aircraft disintegrates. A massive fireball blooms in the sky, orange and black against the pale blue. The shockwave shears the starboard wing off the fuselage. The aircraft begins a violent tumbling spin, spewing burning fuel and hydraulic fluid into the slipstream. Splash one! Splash one! The U.S. wingman yells. Gravity claims the wreckage. The burning hulk plummets toward the ocean surface below. Seconds later, a small white parachute blossoms amongst the falling debris. The enemy pilot has punched out, but there is no time to celebrate. The formation is broken. The remaining Chinese jets react with fury, turning their noses toward the American victor. Tracers erupt from the sky as the duel intensifies. 6:20 hours, 10,000 feet above the ocean. The battle compresses into a terrifyingly small sphere of airspace. Missiles are exhausted. The engagement distance collapses from miles to meters. It is now a knife fight in a phone booth. The jets scream around each other in tight, crushing circles, fighting for a firing solution. The air reeks of burnt kerosene and ozone. The U.S. flight lead slams his throttle back and forth, trying to spoil the aim of the Chinese fighter jet glued to his tail. He yanks the stick into his lap. The jet responds with a violent shudder, the wings cutting deep grooves into the humid air. Vapor trails stream off the wingtips like ribbons. He looks over his shoulder. The nose of the enemy jet lights up. Muzzle flashes sparkle like strobe lights. A stream of tracers whips past the U.S. canopy. They look like angry orange laser beams. The sound of the 30mm cannon fire reaches him a split second later. A tearing, ripping noise that vibrates through the fuselage. The rounds miss the cockpit by inches. They chew through the left vertical stabilizer. Metal shears off. Sparks shower into the slipstream. The U.S. jet bucks hard to the right, momentarily out of control. The pilot fights the pedals, stomping on the rudder to correct the yaw. "Guns, guns, guns!" he screams into the mask. He reverses his turn, stomping the left pedal. The maneuver forces the attacking Chinese jet to overshoot. The enemy aircraft slides in front of him, filling his windshield. The gray camouflage paint is clearly visible. The heat from its engines distorts the air. The U.S. pilot squeezes the trigger. The 20mm cannon in the nose of his jet roars to life. The entire aircraft vibrates violently, shaking the pilot's teeth. A 6-foot flame erupts from the gun port. Hundreds of rounds spew forth in a single second. The tracers stitch a line across the sky. They impact the right wing of the Chinese jet. The wingtip explodes. Debris flies backwards, striking the U.S. jet's canopy with a loud crack. The polycarbonate glass holds, but a spiderweb fracture appears. The wounded Chinese jet rolls away, leaking hydraulic fluid. But the fight is not over. Another shadow falls over the U.S. lead. A third Chinese fighter dives from above, cannon blazing. The U.S. pilot is out of energy and out of speed. He pushes the nose down, diving toward the ocean surface to regain airspeed. The altimeter unwinds rapidly. 8,000, 6,000, 4,000. The blue water rushes up to meet him. 6:30 hours, 50 feet above the Philippine Sea. The world is a blur of blue water and white foam. The U.S. flight lead fights to keep his damaged jet level. Salt spray coats the windshield as the aircraft screams across the wave tops at Mach 0.9. The turbulence is brutal at this altitude. The stick shakes violently in his hand, fighting his grip. Behind him, the pursuing Chinese fighter jet locks its radar onto his exhaust nozzle. The threat warning system screams a continuous, high-pitched death knell. The enemy pilot lines up the shot, ignoring the danger of the waves below. "Fox 2 launch detected," the computer voice warns. The U.S. pilot grips the ejection handle. He has no flares left. He has no altitude to maneuver. He braces for the impact that will tear his aircraft apart. Suddenly, the radio crackles with a new voice. It is calm, distinct, and American. "Rifle 1-1, check fire, cleared hot." 4 white smoke trails streak down from the cloud layer above. They look like lightning bolts made of vapor. They are not aimed at the flight lead. They race past his canopy, targeting the bandit on his tail. The Chinese pilot sees the death coming from above. He yanks his stick back, abandoning the kill. He pulls 20 degrees nose up, trying to outrun the ambush. It is futile. 2 medium-range missiles slam into the climbing Chinese jet. The double impact is catastrophic. The aircraft does not just break apart, it vaporizes. A massive sphere of fire erupts, instantly engulfed by black smoke. Debris rains down into the ocean, splashing into the wake of the fleeing U.S. jet. The shockwave ripples across the water surface, flattening the waves. The roar of engines fills the sky. 4 U.S. carrier-based fighters scream overhead in tight formation. They bank hard, their wings loaded with fresh missiles. They have arrived from the carrier strike group stationed 200 miles south. The reinforcements enter the fray with overwhelming energy. "Good kill, Rifle. Tally 2 more bandits at 12 o'clock high." The flight lead gasps into his mask. The arrival of the wolf pack changes the geometry of the battle instantly. The remaining Chinese jets, outnumbered and low on fuel, find themselves on the defensive. The fresh American fighters split into pairs. They activate their afterburners, climbing vertically to dominate the high ground. The air fills with the thunder of high bypass turbofans. The hunters have become the hunted. The sky is now a kill box. 6:35 hours, surface of the Bashi Channel. The ocean churns under the sonic fury of the dogfight above. A massive gray hull slices through the waves, creating a wide, frothy wake. It is a Chinese destroyer, bristling with hexagonal radar panels and missile silos. Inside the Combat Information Center, crew members shout coordinates into headsets, their faces illuminated by the green glow of waterfall displays. The captain stands rigid, watching the tactical plot. He gives the order. On the foredeck, heavy steel hatches flip open with a sharp metallic clang. Smoke vents first, a hiss of pressurized gas, then fire. A massive long-range surface-to-air missile erupts from the vertical launch tube. It roars skyward, riding a pillar of yellow flame that scorches the deck paint. Another follows, then a third. The destroyer unleashes a salvo, transforming the surface battle into a vertical kill zone. The missiles accelerate instantly, shedding their booster stages and angling for the high-altitude intercept. They look like telephone poles made of fire, piercing the cloud layer in seconds. High above, the U.S. Wolfpack pilots hear the terrified warble of their warning systems. Vampire! Vampire! Surface launch! Brake hard! The formation scatters immediately. The orderly attack dissolves into desperate survival maneuvering. The U.S. jets dive, roll, and twist, dumping chaff and flares in rhythmic pulses. The sky fills with decoys. The Chinese missiles are smarter and faster than the air-to-air weapons encountered earlier. They climb at Mach 4, relentless and unblinking. One missile locks onto a trailing U.S. fighter jet. The pilot slams the throttle to the stops and dives toward the hard deck, attempting to drag the missile into the thicker air. The weapon corrects its course, its fins making micro-adjustments to track the target. It closes the distance. The proximity fuse detects the aircraft. The warhead detonates 50 feet off the fighter's left wing. The explosion is massive. A shockwave of high-velocity shrapnel shreds the air. It acts like a giant shotgun blast. Tungsten pellets tear through the aluminum skin of the U.S. jet. They sever hydraulic lines and puncture the fuel tanks. The aircraft shudders violently, smoke pouring from the fuselage. The pilot fights the stick, but the controls feel mushy and unresponsive. The warning lights on the dash blink a frantic red. The predator has become the prey. 6:40 hours, airspace over the Bashi Channel. Inside the stricken U.S. fighter jet, the cockpit transforms into a coffin of noise and smoke. The master caution light flashes a blinding rhythmic red, illuminating the thick gray fumes pumping through the air vents. The aircraft shudders violently, groaning under the stress of uncontrolled flight. The hydraulic pressure gauge drops to 0. The stick goes limp in the pilot's hand, moving uselessly without resistance. The jet rolls left, entering a violent flat spin. The horizon whips past the canopy glass, sky, water, spinning faster with every rotation. Centrifugal force pins the pilot against the right side of the cockpit. He struggles to move his arm. The altimeter unwinds in a blur, 15,000, 12,000, 10,000. The engines surge and die, starved of fuel. The aircraft is a falling brick. There is no recovery. The pilot tucks his elbows in. He grabs the yellow and black loop between his legs. He yanks the handle upward. Explosive bolts detonate around the canopy frame. The glass roof shears away, ripped into the slipstream instantly. The roar of the wind is deafening. A split second later, the rocket motor under the ejection seat ignites. A pillar of fire blasts the pilot out of the cockpit. 14 Gs of vertical force compress his spine. The acceleration is brutal. He shoots upward, clearing the tail fin by mere feet. The wind blast hits him at 400 knots. It feels like slamming into a concrete wall. His helmet snaps back against the headrest. His limbs flail against the restraints. The seat separates. The drogue chute catches the air, stabilizing the tumble. Then the main parachute deploys. The risers snap taut with a bone-jarring crack. The pilot swings wildly in the harness, gasping for air. Below him, the empty fighter jet continues its death spiral. It plunges nose first into the ocean. A massive geyser of white water and orange flame erupts from the impact point, sending a shockwave rippling across the surface. The debris sinks instantly. Good shoot! Good shoot! Marker is set! The wingman calls over the survival radio. The pilot hangs suspended in the sudden silence. He checks his limbs. He is alive. He looks down. His boots dangle over a vast expanse of hostile ocean. Far below, the white wake of the Chinese destroyer cuts through the water, hunting for him. 6:50 hours, high altitude over the Bashi Channel. The fury of the dogfight evaporates, replaced by a cold mathematical reality. The sky is no longer filled with the roar of combat, but with the urgent, rhythmic beeping of cockpit warnings. The fuel gauges on the U.S. fighter jets read critically low. The prolonged use of afterburners has drained the tanks. The engines are thirsty beasts, and they are starving. Bingo! Bingo! All units disengage immediately! The AWACS controller commands over the guard frequency. The order is absolute. The U.S. pilots chop their throttles back to idle. The sudden deceleration throws them forward against their harness straps. The roar of the engines drops to a high-pitched whine. They check their navigation displays. The nearest aerial refueling tanker is 80 miles south. The fuel totalizers tick down steadily. 1,800 pounds, 1,700 pounds. It is a razor-thin margin. To the west, the Chinese formation reaches the same conclusion. The enemy jets bank hard toward the mainland. They do not look back. They jettison their empty external fuel tanks to reduce drag. The aluminum canisters tumble through the air, flashing in the sunlight before disappearing into the cloud deck. The Chinese pilots level their wings, seeking the most efficient glide path home. The engagement zone empties rapidly. One U.S. pilot spots a straggler. A damaged Chinese jet trails white smoke, struggling to maintain altitude. The American pilot's thumb hovers over the weapon release button. He has a tone. He has a shot. He glances at his fuel gauge. The numbers flash amber. 500 pounds. If he turns to engage, he burns the reserve. He will splash the Bandit, but his own engines will flame out 5 minutes later. He will swim. The physics of flight offer no negotiation. He releases the button. He banks his aircraft gently to the south, turning his back on the enemy. The two formations diverge like oil and water. The adrenaline fades, replaced by the vibration of the airframe and the anxiety of the fuel count. The battle is over. The race against gravity begins. 700 hours, high over the Philippine Sea. The violence ends as quickly as it began. The sky clears. The tangle of white contrails begins to drift and fade, torn apart by the high-altitude winds. The roar of afterburners is gone, replaced by the steady, monotonous drone of turbofans running at cruise power. The sun climbs higher, illuminating a battlefield that is largely empty air. Below, the ocean bears the scars. Thick black columns of smoke rise from the water surface. They mark the graves of fallen machines. Patches of burning jet fuel float on the swells, creating islands of fire in the endless blue. Slick sheens of oil spread outward, calming the chop. Pieces of composite fuselage, torn insulation, and shattered canopy glass bob in the waves. A lone flight helmet floats amidst the wreckage, its visor reflecting the clouds. The surviving U.S. fighter jets limp southward. They fly in a ragged formation. The pristine gray paint is scorched and pitted. One jet trails a thin wisp of hydraulic fluid from its left wing root. Another has a jagged hole in its vertical stabilizer, whistling in the slipstream. The pilots conduct battle damage checks. They crane their necks, scanning their wingmen for leaks or loose panels. Rifle flight status check. The lead rasping voice breaks the quiet. 2 is green. 3 is leaking fuel, stable. 4 is down. The silence follows the report. There is no reply from the 4th position. The slot in the formation is empty. The pilots stare at the gap where a $60 million machine and a human life used to be. They do not speak. They tighten the formation, closing the distance to reduce drag. They nose their aircraft toward the distant silhouette of the aircraft carrier, leaving the burning water behind. 7:30 hours, surface of the Philippine Sea. The downed pilot clings to the side of his small yellow survival raft. The ocean swells lift him up and drop him down in a nauseating rhythm. Salt water stings his eyes and coats his throat. He is exhausted. On the northern horizon, a jagged gray silhouette grows larger. The Chinese destroyer cuts through the whitecaps, closing the distance at 30 knots. Its bow wave crushes the ocean. The radar dish on the mast spins rapidly. It is a race. A low-frequency thumping vibration hits the pilot's chest. It grows into a roar. A U.S. rescue helicopter screams in from the south. It flies dangerously low, its wheels skimming feet above the wave tops. The pilot flares the aircraft hard. The nose pitches up. The heavy machine shudders as it comes to a hover directly over the raft. The massive downwash from the rotors hits the water. It flattens the waves into a chaotic, swirling bowl of white mist and spray. The noise is deafening, drowning out the ocean. The side door of the helicopter slides open. A rescue swimmer dressed in a black wetsuit and fins sits on the edge. He jumps. He hits the water with a splash. He surfaces instantly, cutting through the chop with powerful, rhythmic strokes. He reaches the raft in seconds. He grabs the pilot's flight harness and slams a locking carabiner onto the D-ring. He yanks the steel hoist cable taut. He flashes a thumbs up to the crew chief above. "Hook up! Hoist! Hoist!" The electric winch whines. The cable tightens violently. The pilot and the swimmer are yanked out of the water. They dangle in the air, spinning slowly as the helicopter fights the wind. Seawater drips from their boots. Boom. A white geyser erupts from the ocean surface 300 yards away. The Chinese destroyer has fired its deck gun. The shell impact sends a shockwave through the water. The helicopter pilot screams into the intercom. He does not wait for the men to clear the door. He pulls the collective lever up. The engines scream at maximum power. The helicopter lurches forward while the men are still hanging 10 feet below the struts. The crew chief grabs the pilot's vest and hauls him onto the metal floor of the cabin. The swimmer scrambles in after him. The helicopter banks sharply to the right. It drops its nose and accelerates, racing away from the enemy ship. The gray hull of the destroyer shrinks in the distance. The pilot lies on the vibrating floor, coughing up water. He is safe.